Let's talk about the Canadian model of occupational performance and engagement, also known as CMOP-E. This model was developed by the Canadian Association of Occupational Therapists in 2007. The authors were Elizabeth Townsend, Helen Palatayko, and Janet Craig. This is an occupational therapy model that evolved from the CMOP model from 1997. The CMOP-E model integrated engagement. Engagement is the client's meaningful and motivated participation within an occupation.
The first thing I'd like to discuss is how theory guides the occupational therapy process, how theory is developed, and its purpose and importance to occupational therapy. Theory provides a framework to understand clients, identify problems, and determine meaningful outcomes, supporting clinical reasoning, guiding assessments, and intervention planning, while also helping to predict factors affecting occupational performance. It also forms part of evidence-based practice alongside research, therapist experience, and client preferences. Theory is developed when observations that can't be fully explained occur. Propositions are then formed by current knowledge and assumptions about clients and their outcomes. Over time, the theory is refined through research, practice, reflection, and critique, and is influenced by social, culture, and professional factors. Theory provides a foundation for understanding occupational performance and guiding skilled practice, offering concepts and hypotheses that support decision-making and predictions. This is so important because it ensures that occupational therapy practice is structured, evidence-informed, and focused on improving participation and informants. The central organizing idea of the Canadian model of occupational performance and engagement is the client-centered and dynamic relationship between the person and environment and occupation, the person being placed at the core, including physical, cognitive, and affective components. Surrounding these are the occupations of self-care, productivity, and leisure. However, the main focus of intervention is the interaction between the person, occupation, and environment. An example of this is a 10-year-old recovering from a wrist fracture who wants to play piano again. The physical is limited wrist mobility, cognitive, they know how to read the music, and affective, they feel frustrated but motivated to play. Occupation is playing the piano, which is a meaningful leisure and activity. The environment is that the physical supports the piano being accessible at home and at all times. Social, supportive parents and a music teacher, and cultural, perhaps playing piano is valued in the child's family. Now, OT intervention using the Canadian model of occupational performance and engagement would entail modifying the environment, so adjusting piano height, producing adaptive tools, and developing small skills and steps to achieve the overall engagement in playing the piano once more, which is strengthening and finger mobility exercises. And handing it off to Eves.
So Leon actually just gave us some really good examples as to the person, the environment, and the occupation. But I wanted to delve on that a little bit further to give us some really solid examples. Okay, so when it comes to the person, it's everything internally that makes up who they are. Those are the things that we're considering when it comes to this model. So that's their physical capabilities, how strong they may be. That's their cognitive skills, like how's their memory and things of that nature. But that's also their emotional affect. That's another thing that we're considering, their ability to cope, their mood and things like that. But at the center of the person is spirituality. Okay, and spirituality isn't necessarily religion, but rather how that person finds meaning in their lives. Moving from that, we've got the environment, which can be your physical environment, like your home and community, but it can also be your cultural environment or your social environment, your institutional environment, like laws and policies. And then finally, obviously, we have the occupation. The occupation can consist of simple activities like self-feeding, and toileting and things of that nature. And it can even include like child rearing or caring for others, like your pet. And all these factors, that person, the environment, and the occupation, they work together dynamically to either limit or improve in that individual's ability to participate and engage in the occupations that they value, that are meaningful to them.
This model explains functioning through the interaction of three main components: the person, the environment, and the occupation. So, what makes it stand from the CMOP model? Well, through the engagement, this model emphasizes on the meaning and value of that occupation to the person. We can say this is a client-centered model. The CMOP-E includes the client as themselves, the environment, and the occupation. Since the model includes all of these elements, we are able to gather information about factors that may be positively impacting occupational performance and those that can be hindering the occupational participation. For this reason, the CMOP-E model allows occupational therapists to better understand the client's overall functioning and to guide intervention towards improving meaningful occupational engagement.
Hi, I'm Melina. The Canadian model of occupational performance and engagement helps occupational therapists look at a person's everyday activity. Now, this model has three parts. It looks at the person, it looks at the environment, and it looks at the activity and how they perform the activity. A simple example is making coffee. So I'm the person, the environment is my kitchen, and the task that I will be performing is making coffee. Now, coffee to me is meaningful. I have to have a cup of coffee every morning to start my day. Hey, stop right there. Research supports this approach. Studies with bariatric patients, people receiving mental health services, and children with physical disabilities all show that when they focus on meaningful daily activities in real environments, their participation and performance improves.
Hi, my name is Luce Ortiz, and as my peers mentioned prior, the Canadian model of occupational performance and engagement is deeply influenced by the people performing the task, the environment in which the task is being performed in, and also the occupation or task being performed itself. I'll elaborate. As an occupational therapist, when taking a patient as an individual into consideration, it's important to consider things that align, such as cognitive and physical abilities, as well as their spirituality, which encompass their determination. When observing the environment, it's important to take into consideration motivators as well as the barriers. These can be identified as immediate as well as external family or friends, or stayers in the home. And finally, occupations can be identified as activities of daily living, such as cooking or dressing. To positively impact the person's performance, it's our responsibility to consider not only what the person enjoys, but also a support system in order to help guide and motivate optimal performance. That is why the Canadian model of occupational performance and encouragement uses client-centered education, coaching, encouragement, advocacy, and modification among other techniques during their intervention process.